Hey guys, Gibbo here. Just going to go through quickly the different steps and layers that I went through to take this scene from an empty lounge scene into the Gollum fighting the chick from the ring for his precious. So let's jump straight in. Basically, this shot is made up of 4 shots. I took a clean slate background of a lounge scene with a fireplace that will eventually become the TV. I then took a shot just in case. I put a light into the fireplace just to create some highlights as if the screen was illuminating the room. I then took a photo of Haley, my lovely model, as the girl from the movie The Ring. She was coming out of the TV, so I positioned her coming out of the fireplace. And then lastly, I took a photo of Gollum over here, trying to match the lighting as if he was facing the TV. Right, so jumping into Photoshop, here we go. Here. Oh, sorry, just jumped down there. Here are all the layers, basically. So the background layer is, as you see, just the empty scene. I then added the highlights layer. I could have just used the shot with Haley, but I ended up just doing this just as a clean background as well, just so I didn't have a model in the shot. So I laid that over and I masked out some of the dark areas. You can see I left the dark areas by the table, by the excuse me, by the blinds, by the TV, by the fireplace and whatnot. I then basically started playing around. I made the highlights brighter with a curves adjustment layer, masking out the darkness, obviously. I then added a blue tint. You can see here I pulled down some of the blue on the blue channel. I increased some of the blue on the blue channel on the curves layer, and then just played around with some of the levels to make some of the darker areas darker. I then basically just drew a black shape for a TV screen to cover the fireplace, so it'll be like a flat plasma screen. And yeah, that was how I got to that stage. I then took Haley's layer there, and you can see it wasn't matching to the color yet, but basically I cut her out, dropped her in there. I then added I painted over her layers with, you can see here, I did an overlay layer, and I basically went over with a dark brush just to give the darker areas a bit more of a punch. You can see just on the top I wanted there to be a little bit more darker areas just on the shirt, and then I added even more darkers. I pulled down a curves layer, pulled down the layer, and then I just masked out all the highlight areas so you can just see the dark areas. And then with this curves layer, I upped the blue channel just to give it a bit more of a blue, dark, mysterious, scary tinge to it. And then what I did there, I literally went with a different style brush. I think this is like a spray paint brush. Just painted around her waist to look like there's sort of a glow, electricity vibe coming out of the TV screen, and then I duplicated that and softened the edges just to give more of an overall feel of her coming through the TV. Once I'd done that, I basically took this shot here. This one, let's see if I can get it soloed, is of just the ring's background shot of I think her name's Samara standing outside of the ring of the well. So I literally put that as a background, and for good measure I just added the ring logo there just in case people didn't get the scene. That's just a little sort of hint and a reminder. At this stage it was looking all married up quite nicely. What I did do then was I did put a blue tint full layer, you can see here, and I've changed it to a darken layer so it doesn't affect the dark layers too much, but mainly the highlight layers. No, actually that's the other way around. That does affect the dark layers, I lie, sorry. And that gave the overall scene that blue tint layer, and I applied the same layer, full layer, to Haley's character. As you can see, what just turned on there automatically is I made a 50% gray layer above Haley's folder, and I clipped it to a folder so it will only affect what you see with Haley. And I made that layer a soft light layer. Basically works now as a dodge and burn layer. So I took a black brush, I darkened the dark areas, I lightened the light areas with a white brush, and it just gives more of a contrasty feel, makes her pop out of the scene a bit more. I then added a slight glow. I literally duplicated her mask layer that I cut her out, filled it with a like a translucent blue, and added. I played around with no, I didn't actually. I lied. I don't know why it's still there. I think I did, but I didn't end up going with it. But that basically is the slight outer glow. It's not too apparent, but if you turn it on or off, you can see it. It does subtly make a nice little effect. And then what I did is I added a shadow. So I like to use the shadow that was already incorporated from the shot, but I extended it a little bit onto the carpet, give a little bit of a head print here. And that was basically the layer for Haley. Now, I went here onto the window scene. I could see there's some bright highlights coming through the blinds here. So what I did with a brush is I literally went and I painted with a brush some strong, very soft but strong streaks of light that looked like they're coming through, and then just went with an eraser and just rubbed out some of the, so it looks like streaks of light coming through like a dusty room. I then added a slight blue, played with hue and saturation to give it more of a bluish tone to it. And let's see, also I found that there was too much light behind her, so I just created another overlay, 50% grey layer, covered it in black, so it just affected the scene behind her on the brick. So that was basically Haley, getting Haley right with the TV screen. You can see now the screen, I needed to fill up the edge here, and I wanted to give there a little bit of a glow on the outside of the TV screen, caused from the screen itself flickering the movie. So I put on another, I duplicated the frame, extended it, transformed it so it was a slightly bigger box around the TV screen, and I added an inner glow and an outer glow to give that highlight look like a TV screen on. Then this layout, I did it at last minute, was there was this picture of this boat, and I thought it would be pretty cool to put a wedding photo, in this case my wedding photo, up there, and add it to the scene as a subliminal message that Gollum is obsessed with the ring. So that was just I don't know, like a hidden Easter egg, if you will, of the ring. Moving on now up to Gollum himself. So you can see here, there's Gollum. Basically dropped him in the scene, cut him out, put him in the place I wanted to, and from that point on I added some shadows, just went with a brush, did some light shadow work just around his feet, and then I did another layer where I extended the shadows behind his feet, a little bit onto the bookshelf, just to make him look like he's sitting in the scene. After that, I darkened a little bit on the back side of him, because as you get further away from the light source it will get darker, so I pulled the curves layer down and darkened that above that one. Just pulled out some of the brightness, the yellows and the greens, so there's a little bit more blues and reds. And then with this levels layer, just took away some of the highlights on his knee and arms, because I thought it was a bit too bright. And then pulled even more. I think I just pulled the middle, the curve over here. You'll see. I think it's that one. Yeah, I've pulled down so there wasn't such a strong highlight, so I've pulled the highlights down. You can see there on the curves layer there, I've pulled down the highlights quite considerably, just so that the brights aren't too bright, so they've dulled back a bit. And then I've done what I've done with Haley's layer and the background layer. I've got a full layer of color that I overlay, and I clip it to Gollum, so it gives an overall bluish tinge effect to the character to make him fit in with the scene. And then took a color picker, chose the color from these highlights from the blind, and just painted over the dark areas on the back. Because if you look here, if I turn it off, he's quite dramatically sticking out from the background. This way it looks like that he's within the misty effect of the room, if you can call it that. I then, because there's light coming in, I just took a brush, I clipped it obviously to Gollum. You can see I've clipped it there, and I've painted on a bit of a highlight ridge around his back and shoulders on the back of his head, just to show that he's actually being illuminated there by the light. And then this layer, I just gave a little bit more of a shadow over his hand, to where Haley's hand was showing. Right, and I then basically made a big shape around the TV screen. I duplicated the shape of the TV screen and filled it with a blue and made it a light and blend mode, and dropped the fill there. So it's just giving an overall like the TV screen is on, it's just giving a very dull light throughout the room. And then duplicated that, made a white layer, and on the layer mask just gave a sort of a streaky effect. If I turn it on and off, you'll see it's just like a bright sun flare effect. It's not noticeable when you don't see it turned on and off, but it's just a subliminal effect that I think adds quite a nice little feature. I then added a bit of a misty effect around Haley's character, just to look like it's a bit more mysterious, a bit more moody, and had to change that color because that was straight white. So I pulled down the blues, make that mist a little bit more bluey. I then added some dust particles over here. Let's just close this one. You can see here the dust particles over here in the window, in the shadows, a little bit around Haley here. When I turn them on and off, it's just like I don't know, like there's a lot of particles in the air. Gives it a little bit more mystique, a little bit more I don't know, but it just looks cool. Dust particles. Did a solid black layer, put a layer mask on it just to give it a just to highlight, like I made this, you can see there's the black area in the layer mask, just to show this is the central point of interest. So basically around that point of interest I've darkened the edges just so your eye sort of naturally travels to the scene itself. I then just added a little bit of, I don't know, dirt particles, maybe they're a little bit of water drops, maybe some puddles, I don't know, but just something just to break the even consistency of the carpet. I then I did another 50% gray layer, turned it to overlay, and then used my dodge and burn tool just to increase the highlights and shadows. It's a nice way to make the image pop towards the final stages. Once I'd done that, I grouped all the layers together, made a single layer of everything, and went up to filter, did a camera raw filter where I upped the clarity, I dropped the white balance a bit down to a bit bluer, so it was a bit colder, lifted up some of the highlights and shadows so you could see a little bit more detail in the shadows, like over here. Just picks up that there's a little bit more interesting details. Once I'd done that, I duplicated that layer again and went down. I've got the Google NECA Collective software installed, and I did a color effects where I did a detail extractor, a little bit of a glow effect, put more of a greenish tinge on because I think the green just gives more of a sickly feel to the image. And yeah, that's basically how I came to the conclusion of Gollum and the Ring. Yeah, I hope you like it, and yeah, I'll be doing these tutorials again soon. Thanks guys for watching. Have a great day. Cheers.